All right, let's talk about the Jedi's role. Everything a Jedi does culminates in the first line of the Skywalker Code, which reads, Jedi are guardians of peace in the galaxy. Now, we might not be part of an intergalactic community, but we are certainly citizens of this beautiful planet we call Earth. So I'm going to switch over to our slideshow. Well, this is what we're talking about. So it says here, a Jedi's mission is to support their community, and this is through service. A Jedi is charged with the acting objectively. When they recognize a situation where someone needs help, Jedi put their lives above the lives of others, even when facing danger, knowing that they can help through direct action or indirect action as per the situation. To that end, the Jedi compass takes the line, the Skywalker Code, as it creates ethic to define our actions in the world around us. Its duty to all is defined as what I said in right there. A Jedi's mission is to support their community through service. Let's talk about the first sentence that defines the Jedi's mission as supporting the community through service. So, what would you define as your community? Who wants to share what you feel, each of you, about what you define as your community?
As far as my community, and that can encompass many different things, from your family to your neighborhood to our Jedi community to all the way up to the world community. So there's several different circles growing and growing that you can take part in and feel that is part of your community. But again, you also run that line where you are looking at how you feel about being part of a given community too. And as Jedi, we kind of cover all communities to some respect.
Okay, that's a great perspective. And what do you see, Dan? What do you see as your community?
My community is the things I can most immediately affect. So things that could be, family, Jedi community in the area as well, locally. As I am touching now upon the national Jedi community a bit, getting more involved with taking the classes here and attending gatherings. There's also, our municipality community. So like things I might even do in my neighborhood as far as keeping watchful eye out kind of things. Again, all of that also depends on what my resources are to make effective changes or help within those communities.
Okay, great. Rebecca, what do you think?
Mine was my answer is similar to the first answer. I think that I look at community in terms of circles that get progressively larger. And I look at my immediate inner circle as friends, where I spend the most time, work, my workplace, where I live, the neighborhood where I work, which is, like a town and a half over. And then I look at the community a little larger, like spread the parameters out, my state, my country, then the world. But I feel like realistically, I can do the most good in my smaller circles, like in my actual community where I live, work, things like that. So just little things like I've been involved in club involvements, some community service in our small town. Ali's familiar with my town, and it's a little rural, so we have things like a pay it forward site. We have a little like food bank that we do. We have some shelters that we do work with that I like to work with. I'm an animal lover, so just things like that. And then just generally being a helpful, trying to be a helpful, kind person, a good example, make sure my kids that I teach or that are in my care are being supported as well as their families. So I feel like, start small and then move outward as you have the time and resources. Because, realistically, I know my money is tight and my energy is spent after a day at being a preschool teacher. So, doing what you realistically can as much as possible, but also caring about and being aware of greater issues that affect, as you said, planet Earth and that aspect as well.
Excellent. Excellent. Anybody else want to share what they feel their community is?
I tend to be rather selective when it comes to my community, my notions of community. So I'm of two minds. There are the regular notions of community. There's my neighborhood. There's the town that I live in. There's all the geographical aspects of community, but I don't live in a geographical way. So I participate in my community in a very specific way through charitable organizations. So I engage there and through that expand to a group of people that I don't know, that I don't understand, that I don't know directly. And this allows me to have broader impact than I would if I would just focus on my immediate surroundings. In my neighborhood, I've got 12 different households that none of us talk to each other. And that's as much my fault as it is anybody else's. We don't have a sense of community in our neighborhood. There are neighborhoods that do, but ours does not. But I am a member of a charitable organization in our town, and we support all the local schools. And so even though my daughter is 30 and is living in New York, I have no relationship to schools whatsoever. We still work to support the local schools, local teachers, and the students involved. And so that addresses community concerns in kind of both a personal and an abstract way. Through that, I've been able to expand my participation in community to larger, more state level operations. And so when I'm looking at what communities do I engage with two specific communities predominantly. One is my very personal connections. So the people that I interact with interpersonally directly. So that includes everyone in this meeting. That includes, the people that I deal with on a day-to-day basis. And that's my intimate community. And then the second way is I participate in a more abstract notion of community through organizations. And that allows me to maximize my impact to people that I may not be directly impacted with.
Thank you, Miles.
I like how he broke that up into like an intimate and abstract community.
Indeed.
Yeah, it's like your abstract can also be things like being online and having an online community that you might make effect through.
I don't know if I can add to it. It's more or less the same answer. I would believe community would be, in a very general sense, the people you are closest to in kind of any sense of the term. So the people that you see on a daily basis, whether that's positive or negative, they're people that interact with your life overall. That could be anything from people you talk to online, people you're friends with, your family, your own house, even the people that live around you in your neighborhood. That would all be a community because you all live, work, and spend your lives together.
Great. And Sophia, anything? What's your community?
Everyone touched on like everything, being in online, be at work, my neighborhood. I talk to everybody, people I don't even know. I like talking to everybody. I work at
You also have a community of people you deal with at the gymnasium. I know I often see you interacting with a lot of people who you teach and show how to work out better.
Yeah, I'm talking to people all the time at work, even outside of work. I'm just walking down the street. Pretty funny because even when I travel, I say hi to everybody. Is different when you go to different communities. If being as in like went to California, and I say hi to everybody, everyone said hi back. Went to New York and maybe one out of every 100 said one hi back, but I always kept trying, to like talk to people, but just always trying to reach people. So yeah, just doing the best to try to touch everybody and make everybody a part of my community. So that's what I do.
Great. Okay, so since you guys answered what you felt your place was, what your community was around you, the second part of that discussion is what it says there, which we're saying, in what ways do you feel you could be of service to your community that you identified? So I'd like to go back to starting with Dan. And Dan, what ways do you think you could be of service to your community?
Given that we're talking about Jedi stuff right now, I take part in my Jedi community as part of the council member of the Chicago Jedi, organizing events for certain things like Chi-Tag, that's Chicago Twain Game Fair, so that we have a presence there. We're helping with a little bit of an entertainment side for them, but it also gets us recognition as Jedi. Let's see. I organize our MS walks. We've been raising some money for MS every year. And we've been doing that for several years now. And that's always been a fun thing to help, as far as a charity in the community. Locally, I communicate with, so locally, as in my neighborhood, I communicate with some of my neighbors and touch base here and there. It's nothing really organized, but it raises that sense of community so that you know people around you, so that you kind of feel like you're looking out for each other.
So what I'm hearing from you is you feel your contribution to the way you feel you could be of service is being a organizer or a person who brings people together by organizing these things, right? You do a lot of that. You act as a coordinator, right?
That and setting an example within my community is one of the biggest things I always thought that anybody can do. Not just Jedi, but setting an example is in scouting, setting an example in the neighborhood. I try to take care of the front of our building so that we don't look like just a mess that's overgrown and all wild. To just set an example is one of the biggest things I think we can do as Jedi, and what I feel I try to do.
All right, who else can? Oh, so Rebecca would be the next person I would say. Rebecca, what do you think you do? What you feel you could be of service to the communities that you talk about?
Well, currently I am an organizer for several of our clubs. I help basically with relying on my talents. I know what my gifts and talents are, and they tend to be kind of a nurturing, like comforting, try to make people feel welcome type of person. So I'm kind of the golden retriever puppy of most of my organizations in a weird way. I've been called that before, and I like golden retrievers, so I'm not going to be angry about that. They're precious. So I try to do some organization. We do, we'll do picnics, get-togethers, hikes. We've done leukemia walks, different charitable stuff. Again, trying to do a little volunteer work with the shelters, fundraising for our local shelters, which are very underfunded, at school, and trying to just participate with special events. We do trunk or treats and this, that. As far as Jedi things, I tend to kind of stay in the background because we have people who've been in the community for so much longer and know so much more. So right now I'm kind of in soaking things up like a sponge mode while still trying to participate. But also I feel like Jedi means you hold yourself to a higher standard. So I keep that in mind all the time, that I have chosen a path where I want to continually improve myself and hold myself to that higher standard and be an example. So I don't want somebody to look at me and go, oh my gosh, look what she's doing, ever. I'm sure there's more I could do in the community that I'm just not thinking about, or that will just come in time.
But that's good. That's how you see your contribution. I think that's fantastic. Miles, what do you feel that you could be of service to your communities?
I could sell everything I own and give all of my money and all of my property and everything to the poor. I could give up every hour of my life. I could give up my job to go and be of service by washing people. I could go and join the Peace Corps and do any miracle things. The problem with what could I be of service is a very tricky question, because I could do a lot of things. It would be self-destructive, and it would be harmful, and it would be martyrous. So it would be a short-term gift. Now, what would I do that is not a martyrous, self-sacrificing process of giving to the community? That's a different question. So the first thing is be there for my friends, first and foremost. If they need help, if I can help, then great. And then second is, I think what would be the best thing I could do for my community to serve it in the various communities that I've identified is to identify how to maximize my impact in a way that I can preserve myself and keep my emotional, mental, and energetic safety. And that means participating in discussions around things that I'm really good at. So for example, in my professional life, I'm a project manager for large scale organizations. I'm in negotiations right now to join a board for a group that raises about $1.5 billion a year to serve on those boards, to figure out what to do with that money and to figure out how to continue to keep that board in existence. Not everybody can do that. Not everybody has that skill set. And I'm in consideration with 4 other people as to whether they would like me to serve on that board. And if they do, then that would be a very impactful, very meaningful way that I can impact a large number of lives that I don't even know. There are 3 other boards that, if this board doesn't go through, there are 3 other boards that are also in consideration for that. So in my world, what should I do to be of service to the community versus what could I do to be of service to the community? What I should do is that which has the greatest impact, that I can also self-preserve, that I can preserve myself and keep myself safe and sane. So what could I do? I could do a lot of things, but I can do them exactly once.
Excellent.
What would be valuable would be to do something that I can continue to do for the remainder of my life.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Churchill, how about you?
How do I put this? I actually touched on something, Ross, you were talking about yesterday, and that if the community is the people that you live around, and as far as my interpretation of what community is, then I think one of the best ways to, generally speaking, serve your community is just show up, if that makes sense. I found oftentimes that, just if you see something wrong and you go there, what you can do to help becomes evident. Like just going and saying, what can I do? You'll get an answer. Or I could say even like, I think Dan said, setting an example. We were just talking about what did you want to be when you grow up? How many of you decided what you were going to be by seeing someone else in that position doing a good job? Probably most of us, I would say. So I think, yeah, set an example and just being present in the community is at least a start.
And being present is a very, very important thing. You brought up a very, very good point. Stand up and be counted. If you're not there, if you're not involved, if you're not engaging what's going on, are you a participant or are you just kind of like saying you're part of it, right? So you showing up and being there, being present, being willing to be part of what's going on, being actively involved is definitely a beautiful part of being part of community. So I think that was well said. That was well said.
With what Miles was saying too about doing something that he can do that makes a difference the rest of his life. I think what he really means is doing something also that lives on beyond him, that these little things that you can do with organizations that, it may be in the short term, you're doing something that's really good right now, but with the Jedi community, by taking part in this, we are building something that I certainly hope lives beyond all of us. The very idea of it.
So Dan, what you're saying is legacy, right? Your actions can have legacy, because if your actions don't have legacy, then what you did might have been great for that moment. But when you do things that have legacy, it doesn't just affect you. It doesn't necessarily just affect you and the person you were with, but you affect everybody long term. It's an excellent, excellent point. Okay. All right. So the next thing we're going to talk about is what's called the gunshot. This is from what Allie has in what was put into the compass. The gunshot. It may seem strange to read in the Jedi compass where it says Jedi put their lives above the lives of others. After all, it seems like Jedi in the fiction constantly put themselves in danger to save others. In truth, it's not necessarily the case. They had training to deal with situations around them in ways that others did not. Protecting yourself is not a bad thing, and actually it can be a difference between helping someone and completely losing the battle to help them. The name of this lesson is called The Gunshot. I'm going to give you a scenario, and I want you to pay attention to what you're hearing. Let me give you the situation. It's dark outside. You hear arguing next door, and after hearing what sounds like a gunshot, you see someone run away from the home while the home falls silent. Do you go and make sure that everything's okay? You know the individual that ran out of the house is completely gone. You most likely will not see them come back. So what we're going to talk about is, I would like you to participate us talking about your opinions and your ideas on this gunshot situation. The first question, well, I told you the why. Right? So, do you dare walk into the home to ensure that the safety of others are in there? Why or why not? Let's keep the same order. So Dan, what do you think? Do you go in? Do you see what's going on? What do you think?
Given the situation, I also have to look at, we talked about circles of community. How well do I know this person? It might affect how I would react. I might go in, but I also might call the police beforehand. If I'm pretty certain it was a gunshot, I'm gonna probably call the police and slowly make my way, cautiously make my way. I don't want to disturb the scene, but if there's somebody that's at risk of dying, I want to be able to at least render aid if need be. But again, not to go in blindly.
Okay, good. All right. So next we'll pass the ball to Rebecca. Rebecca, what do you think? You walk in, you don't walk in? Why? Why not?
I have to admit that I have been involved in a discussion with Allie about this. So I must admit that she changed my viewpoint on what my initial reaction was. So I'll just share my initial reaction and then I'll share my new perspective because like I say, I have to admit that she changed it. I do know my neighbors. In fact, my cousin is like catty corner from me and I make a point to know my neighbors and keep an eye on the neighborhood. So that is one point of why I would initially have immediately run in. But I have in the past run into situations in real life and I don't regret it, but that is usually my initial reaction is run in and save the day. And sometimes that's been very, very good. Somebody had a toddler out on a busy street and I'm really glad that I spilled my coffee on my grandma who actually chastised me about spilling coffee on her to save a toddler. So knowing my neighborhood, knowing that my initial reaction would be like, oh my gosh, somebody needs my help. Somebody needs me to call 911. That's what I would have done. Now, when I talked to Allie, she was like, what if is this cheating? Should I not say what she kind of told me? I don't want to like steer
Maybe we should circle back to that.
Yeah, like, because I was like, she changed. I don't want to mess up anybody's answer, but she did change my answer, and now I have a different answer to that. But now I would not
segment with you. So go ahead.
Oh, okay. Now I would not.
You obviously discussed this.
Yeah, I don't want to, but I would not run in because the person who ran outside, the person inside the house might have been the one that tried to shoot them. So there might be somebody with a gun in the house. You might disturb the scene. You might get yourself shot. So now I would call 911 now because again, you don't know who was shooting who, if it was really, a gunshot, who all was in the house, who was all running away, but maybe still there. So I would be more cautious. And I thank her for that because she made me think about, anything other than, oh my gosh, someone needs my help. And I appreciate that. I like it when people change my perspective on things.
Miles, what do you think?
My notion is, look, this is really context sensitive. So in my neighborhood, as I am now, police response time is about 3 minutes. So I would call law enforcement and then just keep an eye on things and make reference. However, I have lived places where police response was 45 minutes to an hour. Certain areas in California just don't have, the sheriff doesn't get there. And in that case, you have to have a closer relationship with neighbors. You have to have a closer relationship with what's going on because you got to look out for each other and you got to protect each other. It changes the dynamic. And so in those circumstances, it would very much be, now I'm concerned about the safety of my family and having somebody there first. And so, arm up, go and find out what the situation is. Do I know how to help somebody and do I know whether I need to call medical That's going to be important information. You make the phone call first, sure. But whether I go over and investigate something is going to be entirely dependent on what the response time in my area is, and how much I trust local law enforcement, because the level of risk on gunshots is way too high. So there's no notion, to the point that was just made. You don't know who's there, who's not. You don't know what the circumstance is. You don't know how many people were actually in that argument. You don't know if there were 5 other people and they just happened to shoot one, and then one guy went off to go get more ammunition. You just don't know what the rule is. You don't know how these things work. But the context of when I could delegate that to authorities who are better equipped, better trained, and better suited to handle situations like that, and what kind of response that would give and how well I trusted it, would have a very big impact on my decision matrix on how I would evaluate that.
So then next up would be Churchill.
Actually, funny enough, I had a similar incident happened about 5 years ago. The neighbor living next to us, they sold the house, and either they rented the house to one of their sons, or they were just letting him squat there. I don't know, because I never talked to him. But one night, around 10:30 or so at night, somebody pulled up in front of the house, fired 5 shots into the house, and fled. I was outside in the backyard, and I heard and I saw a car leaving, and I immediately called the police. But I didn't actually go over or do anything. When they got there, of course, since I was the one to call the police, they questioned me about what I had seen. And I asked them, if this happens again, what do we do? And he said, nothing. Especially if you don't know the people that live in the house, you don't know who they are. And like Miles was saying, you don't know anything about the situation. Don't do anything. You're not prepared. You're not equipped. You don't know what you're dealing with. Do not go over there. Do not try to render help. Call the authorities.
All right. And Sophia, what's your position on that?
You got to make the phone call first. You got to assess the scene, make sure it's safe. It's like when, you're learning CPR, the first thing they tell you to do is assess the scene, make sure it's safe before you do anything. Make sure you're not about to get shot. And as you're doing so, get out the line of fire, get behind a car, get behind something, and make the phone call first. Like Miles said too, and what Churchill said as well. There's a lot of things to consider. Are you in a neighborhood that you're not used to? Is this a neighborhood that you are used to? Do you know this house? Do you not know that house? Even then, the phone call has to come first. I've been in some situations where I've been shot at before, and it's not a good thing. It is not a fun thing at all. But then I've been in a situation too where there's been a mistaken identity, and police came up, and I'm trying to tell them what's going on, and they're not listening as well. So then I have to make sure that I'm on the line with 911 dispatcher the whole time. And even when police come up, I'm having my hands up so they know that I'm not the person, that's doing the shooting, or anything. So, there's a lot to take in. So, but again, make the phone call first.
All right. So the purpose of this lesson was to bring the perspective on how duty to all should be guided by other ethics within the Jedi compass, particularly defense, action, and the overcome section, overcoming recklessness. Martyrdom, as a former Sith put it, is not all about as much as honorable as people think it is. Unfortunately, it's rare that someone's martyrdom will make impact on anyone. So let's talk about the scenario a little bit more. Is it a gunshot? And who was it exiting the home? The first problem with this scenario is that you hear something that sounds like a gunshot, you would be surprised how many people unaccustomed to hearing gunfire will mistake a car backfiring as a gunshot. The same is true of fireworks. That person running away from the home could be a victim or an assailant or simply trying to sneak out of the house. The truth is, you don't know anything about the person who ran out. You can't even be sure if you know who the person is. Memory simply does not work the way we want it to. It's imperfect, and all you have is these facts. There was arguing so loud next door, you could hear it going on. Depending on where you live, it could have been indoors. It could have been outdoors. If you live in a residential area, you're next door to someone who's likely they were outside or at least at the door. Number two, it sounded like a gunshot. Number three, someone ran away from the home next door. You know nothing else about the particular scenario. Running over to the home to check things out would put you in danger, and that doesn't bode well for you or for people inside the home. Here's why. If you haven't called the police first and the assailant is in the home, you're now putting yourself in harm's way, and you cannot count on your neighbors to have called the police for you. This is a phenomenon subset of diffusion of responsibility called the bystander effect, and was first studied after the 1960s case of Kitty Genovese, who was crying out for help during an ongoing rape. She died from the encounter because no one felt they had the responsibility to call the police about the incident. Number two, if the police have been called, and if you're in the home but no one else is, you become an immediate suspect, and they won't let up. They will tear at your emotions, cause you to lose your ability to help people in your sphere of influence because you're suspected for something you didn't do. Even if your name is eventually cleared, in the worst case scenario, because there's evidence now that shows that you were in the home around the time of the incident, you could go to jail, and that won't serve anyone. And then if you get seriously injured and that another ambulance that is needed, that's another ambulance that's needed. A little known fact is that you need an ambulance for every individual that's a casualty. So if you're taken away by an ambulance from possibly saving another life because you were reckless enough to go into the home, were you knowing nothing about the situation? At the end of the day, you have to assess not only your capabilities, but also what you know and don't know. The most important role you can play at that point is to become a witness that can tell whatever you remember of the situation. You call, and then you start writing down every detail that you recall, because memory gets worse as time goes on. That is the way that you can best help people in the home next door in the event that something serious did occur. Even if the argument was simply a verbal altercation, a call to the police with a description of what happened helps build a case file. Yes, we've heard stories of how police departments have ignored signs, but later down the road, a good attorney won't ignore the evidence. Oftentimes, people misunderstood the language in duty to all as meaning Jedi are more important than other people. Having listened to the lesson of the gunshot, how might you explain the sentence, Jedi put their lives above the lives of others, even when facing danger, knowing that they can help through direct action or indirect action as per this situation? Let's start off with Dan.
Actually, I'd like to ruminate on that one a little bit. So yeah, if you could go on someone else for this one.
All right, no problem. Rebecca, would you like to express what you think?
Sure. If I can remember the question, I think it means
It's just kind of like the whole situation. You got to remember, right?
right. And I love all the points that you made. And I'm so glad that I have to say that the lessons, the conversations with Jedi have curbed what I kind of had some impulsive and reckless behavior that I'm really curbing. So I have to thank the community a lot for that. And for having the opportunity to have like thoughts about these things. So I think it means, don't be reckless, don't be impulsive, don't be a martyr. Being a martyr doesn't help anybody. It doesn't mean that our lives are more important than anybody else's, but it means that we can do more for our communities. We can be of service only as long as we keep ourselves alive and healthy, and we're taking care of our basic needs, because you can't pour from an empty cup. But maybe that's going down another road there. But yeah, I think it just speaks against, if we keep our minds and our wits about us, then we can be of more service. So don't be a victim. Don't make the situation worse. By taking care of yourself, you can still help others. Because, now you're not dead. Now you've done what, like you said, you're doing what is most helpful. by observing, by being rational, calling law enforcement, going through all the right channels. And that can be applied to a lot of things, I think. Just, keeping your head. I'm not sure if I
You did fine. No problem, Rebecca. Your opinion and your feelings about this is what we're looking for.
Okay.
Getting feedback from how you feel that's awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, what you said was great.
Oh, I couldn't remember the question.
Yeah, no, well, we have these things. It's on your screen if you're looking. We have the discussion thing right on the screen if you ever want to know what I'm saying there.
Okay.
Okay, so Miles, you're up.
So the notion of the value of a Jedi life comes foremost to thought for me. It's that piece of I have responsibilities and obligations that are first and foremost in my mind. My obligation to family, my obligation to those I protect, my obligation to those that are in my immediate care who without me are vulnerable or their lives are materially impacted. So those responsibilities are part of the value of my existence, and that means that my life has matter, and it matters. My contribution matters. It doesn't matter so much in those ways that I can be replaced, but there are ways that I cannot be replaced. My wife will not get a husband in the form that I have and you can't just go to the store or just put out an ad and get replacements that fill all those same needs. My daughter won't get a father. My closest friends that rely on me for support that support won't be easily replaced. So a Jedi's life, a person who spends their life being of value in that way of service to others, will end up in a position where that service is something that people depend on. Now, it won't be all versions of the service, but it'll be some. And so now when you are being reckless, when you are not considering the value of the life that you're putting at risk, it's very easy to take a heroic approach when you're in an environment where you don't have a lot to risk. But as you live and as you take on more responsibilities and as you take on more duties and as people come to rely on you, the importance of being present, that importance of being around to fulfill those responsibilities, to fulfill those dependencies, becomes more and more weighty. It becomes more and more important. And so when a Jedi considers when to put their life at risk, they need to consider it more than just the sum of its parts. It's more than just the single life that they have freedom to decide what to do with and to cast it away. They're also impacting the lives of those that come to rely on them. And so the preservation of that is required. The preservation of that is necessary. And so when you say you're putting your lives above the lives of others, your life represents your life and all those you actively impact and who rely on you. And if you're a responsible person, that can be quite a few. So now it's that versus the life of the stranger. Don't be cavalier with the way that you take action. Don't just be cavalier with that responsibility. You're not fulfilling your responsibilities if you frivolously put yourself at risk. Yes, we can help through direct action. We can help through participation, but we must also keep in mind that the version of the direct action, we have to do the risk assessment and we have to evaluate that from a perspective of I got to take care of me and mine, and that's the value of the Jedi life. That means you do have to put it above the circumstance, above the situation. You need to make it more important. There's another version of this called the fireman's dilemma, but I won't go into that just in case it's part of this lecture. But it all falls into that same category. So that's where I pivot on that.
You can go into the fireman's thing if you want. I don't think that conflicts with anything we got going on here.
So the fireman's dilemma is something that they actually train first responders on the situation. So the situation of the fireman's dilemma is somebody is in a burning car and if you could go in and pull them out at risk to your own life. Do you or do you not? And the fireman's dilemma is the instruction is that you do not, because what you're doing is you're not only putting yourself at risk for that moment, but you're putting everyone else that could ever be saved by you in a safe way at risk as well. So in the event that you do pass and your life is lost in the process of trying to save this one person, not only have you traded your life for theirs, but you've traded the opportunity to save the lives of how many ever more you would have in the future because of your training and because of your capability that not everybody has. You can't just replace a well-trained fireman immediately. The value in the longer term isn't equal. And so this becomes that challenge of sometimes, and emergency responders, this can really rock them. I knew a couple of them that were in similar situations, and this can really, really unnerve emergency responders in that sometimes the right choice is not to help if you can't, without putting yourself at serious risk because of the serious risk. And that's a really, really horrible position to be in. But it is that's what they refer to as the fireman's dilemma. And it's a reinforcement of that same notion of the training and the capability and the knowledge and the ability of this one person to do a remarkable amount of good in different contexts means that in this one context, it's not the valuable thing to pursue that and put that situation at risk. So it's related. It's not quite the same thing as what I meant, but it is a related subject.
Dan, did you want to say something about this?
Well, I know how church feels here. So
Yeah.
Miles does a really good job of explaining these things. And yeah, I was like maybe reading too much into the question at the time. That's why I wanted to reread it over and over. But yeah, you got to put yourself ahead of everybody else in a way as a Jedi. If you're going to help someone, like Miles is saying, will you be there beyond that? In essence, it's the put your mask on first attitude that you got to have.
Churchill, did you want to add something to this?
Yeah, I was gonna put it pretty simply, but everybody else kind of beats me to it. That you can't save anybody if you're dead. But the fireman's dilemma I was going to bring up is, well, I was going to call it that, but I actually saw in a TV show that exact dilemma come up, and it was some primetime drama that just on TV that I was watching. But there's two paramedics were showing up to reports of somebody had gotten shot, and when they showed up there, they stopped about a block away, and they could see a crowd of people carrying all kinds of baseball bats and other just random weaponry. And the newer guy in the passenger seat was going to jump out and go run, but the guy in driving grabbed him, pulled him in, and radioed for police backup. And the newer guy got upset with him, telling him, like, when somebody's dying, we need to go now. And he said, no, those guys are wielding weapons out there. We're not going anywhere until there's police here. And my dad was watching it with me, and I asked him the same question, like, why wouldn't you just run out and help them? You got to save a life. If somebody's in danger right now, you have to do something now. And he said, well, sure, but if that guy that's got shot dies while you're trying to save him, how do you think everybody else standing around you with all those weapons are going to react? And I never thought about it like that. So.
That's true. It's true. Whenever you're going to put yourself out there and get involved, you always have to wonder about how you're going to be seen in a situation, even though you're going to try to be the good guy. Miles will often point out that I have a hero complex. And in fact, I do. Yeah, I do. I do recognize that in me. But I've definitely made it part of my own personal practice to say, yes, although I want to jump in and save the day, is that the best decision to do right here? Ross, whatever you're about to do, is that really going to be helpful? Or is this possibly going to be looked at as you really went over the top, or you did too much, or you should have stood back and, call and ask for assistance? There's a bunch of things that you definitely, like Miles had said, I agree, you have to assess the situation very carefully before proceeding. So I agree with that. Sophia, what do you think?
I think there's so much, again, in here, because like we were talking about with community, you spend your whole life connecting to so many people, and so many people that may need you and that may still need you for that you don't even know of yet. And I guess in the words of, I don't even remember it, another franchise that's set in the stars somewhere, sometimes, the needs of the many have to outweigh the needs of the few or one, and you can't, put this one moment of high risk, in front of the many moments to come that you can do so much and build so much more, and once you do, and if something happens, all that is lost. Anything that's connected to you that could have been all the multiple possibilities, infinite amount of possibilities, are now gone and cut off and will never be. I don't remember the name of that franchise, but we'll continue.
All right. Well, so if there's one thing you could always depend upon to come from Allie Thompson is a homework assignment. She's always going to drop some homework on you. So that's my responsibility to pass that on to you now. In the chat, I have just sent a link. For your homework, the link will take you to the work for the assignment. This assignment asks you to research your good local, Good Samaritan, and citizens arrest laws. This assignment is required in order to pass semester 1. You can either submit your answers through a post in your journal on the forum. You are required to provide the government links for each law. A third-party website, which may be out of date, will not satisfy the requirement. And that's the homework assignment that she has put in place for this class. It's the one that's right now up on the screen in case you need to make a note of the homework assignment. The link is in the chat for the Zoom call. And if you need us to send it to you, we can make arrangements to make sure you have it. I want to thank everybody for coming to the class today. Karina, unfortunately, is under the weather and couldn't make it. And therefore, Allie said she would step up and take care of class. Allie wound up having family obligations that came into play. And I stepped up to the plate and said I would cover for her. This, of course, is our Jedi community supporting each other. What a good example for this particular class. So this will officially end the class for today. Everybody's welcome to stay online and talk about this or anything else you would like. But I want to thank you all for attending and coming to class today.